Hi, my name is Vlad, and I'm going to show you how to use Earthly Lunar. Let's imagine that you just got out of a post-incident review meeting, and it turns out that the incident was caused by a Docker file latest tag being used, and the base image suddenly changed after testing having been performed, and somehow it got into production without testing it. And so you want to prevent Docker files from ever using any latest images in the future. So your next question might be, how many Docker files are out there and where exactly? And how many of those Docker files are using latest tags? And then finally, perhaps, how can you enforce that all of these Docker files across the entire organization are no longer using the latest tag? Now, before Lunar, you might have accomplished this by creating significant DIY infrastructure to actively monitor code bases at scale and to additionally create some sort of custom policy engine and some mechanism to inform developers of these deviations. And this normally requires quarters of concerted effort to get right. With Lunar, you can achieve this in just a few minutes, and I'll show you how. The first thing you need to do is to create what we call a collector. The collector does exactly what it sounds like. It collects information from all the projects within your organization. And it's the script that executes across every single repo in your organization. So first of all, we're going to look for all the Docker files that are out there. So I'm going to write a quick find command. I can even test this quickly. There we go. And I can see that there are a bunch of Docker files in here. I'm going to wrap this in a for loop. So here, all it's doing is basically collecting all the paths of those Docker files in a JSON object and accumulating that JSON object through this JQ command. We can pipe that through into Lunar collect, and that will tell Lunar that these are the Docker files that we're interested in. There we go. And this is the resulting information that we're going to pass on to Lunar. So at this point, I've merely collected the Docker file paths, but I wanted to know more information about them. And in this case, I want to know whether they're using specific image tags. So what I'm going to do is collect all the image tags that are referenced in from statements in the Docker file. So I have this little snippet that might be useful. This is a grep command that greps for from statements, and it takes care of all these little edge cases. I'm going to add, there we go. The AI is already one step ahead of me. So let's run that, see what happens. And there we go. In each Docker file, we can see which images are referenced by that Docker file. Note that at this point, we're not enforcing anything. We're merely collecting information. Next, we want to write a policy that is able to enforce the behavior that nobody should be using latest tags in their Docker files. For that, I'm going to save the test output from this collector into a new file called comp test. And also, I'm going to create a new policy. The policy is what takes this JSON information and then enforces specific behavior upon it. And I'm simply going to ask the AI to write the policy for me. All right. And let's see how this works. So let's test this out with our test data. Lunar policy dev. The policy is called Docker file. And I'm going to use the component JSON, the same input file. We called it comp test. Let's run, see what happens. Okay, so we see that this is passing. If we open comp test itself, we see that there is actually no latest tag in here. So I'm going to make one of these latest and see what happens. Run it again, and boom. Now the policy is failing. Perfect. Okay. Now in the configuration, I added this policy Docker file with the enforcement level score. I can set this as draft or score or report PR. There's different levels. For example, draft allows me to create a policy that is only seen by me and nobody else. For score, what it does, policy affects the score of the component and it gets reported to leadership. But for this purpose, let's just go straight to report PR so we can experiment with this a little bit. And let's see now, commit everything. Now I'm going to push this. Now, if I open up the dashboard, I can look at this particular component and see that there's a new check in here, Docker file no latest tags, that is currently passing. And let's try to break it. So let's see what happens if we make a change to the Docker file where the referenced image would have latest in it. So let's commit this change as a PR, create pull request. All right, and let's see what happens now. And there we go. We're getting feedback instantly in the PR that the user used the latest tag. in this very change. If I go and fix it, there we go. Now this is passing. And just like that, within 5 minutes of exiting the post-incident meeting, I can immediately enforce action at scale across the entire company. Every single change across every single repo will now be enforced by this new rule.